The sun rose, but brought no warmth. Farmers saw only a sickly bluish disk where the sun should be. At noon, no shadows fell. Fields in high summer, yet frost clung. Crops withered, children shivered in July. Across 3 continents, from Constantinople to Ireland, people asked one terrifying question: had God abandoned them? They didn't know they were in history's worst year, 536 AD. The sun dimmed like a dying ember, triggering famine, war, and a devastating plague. But what truly caused this global darkness? That fateful year was 536, and the darkness that descended altered everything. To grasp this catastrophe, we first need to know what vanished. The year 536 didn't usher in an era of decay. Instead, it arrived as the ancient world made a last desperate attempt at revival. This was the era of Justinian, marking his 10th. The Western Roman Empire had collapsed 50 years prior, broken into barbarian states. However, in the magnificent eastern city spanning Europe and Asia, Rome still thrived. The Hagia Sophia was under construction, set to become the architectural marvel of its age. Justinian, both brilliant and ambitious, was deeply engrossed in his grand project, the reconquest. Generals, they had retaken North Africa from the Vandals. Sicily also returned to Roman control. The vision of a restored empire, from Mesopotamia to the Atlantic, seemed a silk from China flowed along the grand roads. Spices from India filled Alexandria's warehouses. Grain from Egypt sustained the Mediterranean cities. It was a sophisticated, wealthy, and Constantinople's libraries housed the combined wisdom of Greece and Rome. Law codes were being formalized. The churches were full of devoted followers. Certainly. Yet, this was typical. It was the world's routine. The cycles of harvest, trade, conflict, and peace had endured for centuries. Everyone trusted. Seasons would cycle. God, whether prayed to in a church, synagogue, or pagan temple, was believed to hold the world in balance. But nature cares little for human ambition. What was about to unfold would make a mockery of every plan, every dream. This disaster heralded itself in the strangest way: silence from the sun. By spring of 536, something shifted in the sky. Across the known world, contemporary sources, written in Latin, Greek, Syriac, and Chinese. The sun's light faded. It gave off rays, but they were faint, scattered like moonlight. Its color was distinctly bluish. For 18 months, a year and a half, Cassiodorus, a Roman bureaucrat working in Italy, left a chilling account. He described a sun seemingly in perpetual eclipse, of a summer devoid of heat, and a harvest that never arrived. He noted, with the precision of a man watching his world unravel. Think about it. No shadows at midday. In Constantinople, the historian Procopius recorded the sun appeared like the moon. Its beams weren't clear, and from the moment it began, people were free neither from war, pestilence. In distant China, chroniclers described yellow dust falling like snow, celestial ash so thick it was scooped up in handfuls. This wasn't localized, it was global. From Ireland to Japan, from Scandinavia to Ethiopia, every civilization saw the same horror, the sun's dimming. Their cosmology offered no framework for understanding it. To them, this could only be divine wrath, the end times, or God's judgment. But we, leveraging modern science, can piece together. Indonesia, a massive volcanic eruption had occurred. Not just any eruption, but a cataclysmic explosion, hurling millions of tons of sulfur dioxide and ash into the stratosphere. This formed a global veil, a planet hemisphere by several degrees. For 18 months, the immediate impact was meteorological chaos. The finely tuned cycles that had governed agriculture for thousands of years simply ceased functioning. The growing season collapsed. Spring arrived without mildness, summer lacked heat. In July, to grow. Chroniclers portrayed it with an almost shell-shocked tone. A winter without storms, but a spring lacking warmth, and a summer colder than anyone remembered. The seasons appeared. Farmers gazed at fields that simply wouldn't yield. Grain that should have ripened remained stunted and hard. Vines meant for wine yielded only sour, shriveled grapes. Orchards produced the ancient world's breadbasket. Egypt, North Africa, the fertile river valleys of Italy and Gaul failed, every single one, simultaneously. For civilizations living season to season, harvest to harvest, no massive grain reserves existed, nor global supply chains to move food from surplus areas. If the harvest failed, it failed globally. By 537, the famine was in full swing. Not a temporary food shortage, which medieval societies grimly expected, but a civilizational-level catastrophe. The Byzantine government, reeling but still functional, issued emergency decrees. Emperor Justinian, witnessing his reconquest stall as his armies grew hungry. It was an admission of utter helplessness. Should the sun itself betray you, imperial might become utterly worthless. Out in rural areas, conditions appeared utterly catastrophic. Current accounts speak of abandoned farm animals, already frail from the cold and scarce feed, started perishing in huge quantities. Whole cattle herds, which represented generations of stored wealth, simply gave out. With no beasts, urban centers, relying on a steady supply of sustenance from rural areas, turned into lethal hazards. The cities impoverished were the first to fall victim. Markets, which were once lively and noisy, became completely still. Bakeries ceased. Grain storage facilities were emptied, with no resupply. Hunger stalked the However, starvation represented just the initial horseman. Starvation diminishes physical strength. It impairs the immune system. It compels people into urgent. These circumstances foster ideal conditions for the subsequent disaster. By 541, half a decade following the darkening, a fresher terror reached the harbour. These conveyed Yersinia pestis. The Justinian Plague had now set in. This did not mark the initial bubonic plague. This illness progressed with frightening swiftness and deadliness. Originating in Egypt, it split akin to a river's branches. A single branch traveled southward and westward. The manifestations were grim and quite unmistakable. A sudden, intense fever was its initial manifestation, where the lymph nodes aggressively attempted to combat the contagion. Certain sufferers descended into delirium, tormented by delusional sights, sure that some contracted the pneumonic variant, expectorating blood, and perished in mere hours. Yet other patients fell into comas, their flesh becoming gangrenous and dark with rot prior to expiring. He bequeathed a chilling record of an urban center caught in the throes of a biological disaster. Initially, the death toll was slightly beyond typical. Following, the immense statistical reality of death inundated every system, and the meticulously ordered Byzantine society completely dissolved. Slaves, with their owners deceased, roamed aimlessly and without clear purpose. Prosperous households, formerly served by scores of staff, dwellings that had resonated with sounds for countless generations, now remained silent, and Emperor Justinian himself became sick, with a bubo forming in his groin. For several days, the empire's future remained uncertain, while the sovereign battled the contagion within his private rooms. He lived, but his ambitious endeavor, because of the severe ongoing famine, could proceed no longer. The aspiration for a resurrected Roman Empire, so near to fulfillment, disintegrated into nothingness. Justinian, eager to preserve he exhausted funds from the imperial treasury and his private assets, aiming to stop the deceased from accumulating on public roads. Nonetheless, once these trenches were filled, they seized the protective towers of the city's fortifications, ripped off their tops, and crammed them full of. The odor became overpowering. When the wind came from those directions, those alive could barely draw breath. All long-standing death customs completely fell apart. Deceased individuals were transported upon shoulders to the closest seawall, then simply flung into the sea. The cadavers floated in the. Small boats laden with the deceased were propelled seaward, either to submerge or float to wherever the tides carried them. Society's very fabric broke apart. Constantinople's competing political factions, groups that had previously engaged. As Procopius clearly noted, this wasn't from newfound virtue, but instead from pure terror. All people were convinced they would instantly perish. The ancient world's economic driving force ceased entirely. All labor halted. Artisans left their occupations, markets shut, and vessels sat dormant in ports since no crews could operate them. In a metropolis once flooded with items from 3 continents, hunger turned and water, as no one remained to tend to them. Doctors were ineffective. They dissected the cadavers, conducting what could have been history's initial autopsies, and discovered their remedies were arbitrary and conflicting. Certain patients benefited from bathing. Others then perished from it. Some survived with no aid. If the world's leading medical experts found themselves helpless, what chances did anybody truly have? The disease did not confine itself to urban areas. It journeyed via commercial paths. Procopius observes with unsettling accuracy that should the illness affect a territory mildly or appear to bypass it completely, it would eventually come back. It appeared to progress according to a predetermined plan, remaining for a particular duration in every nation, before, once it eventually exhausted itself, roughly by 544, the Mediterranean realm had changed utterly, becoming unrecognizable. Present-day estimates suggest between 20. The plague of Justinian was documented as the first real global epidemic throughout history. Evidence revealed how sickness could propagate globally and fell even the great. This is because the obscured sunlight, hunger, and illness weren't separate incidents. Instead, these were successive breakdowns, with each preparing the ground for the subsequent. Lacking cultivators to upkeep their water distribution networks, the essential canals and aqueducts, which had supported urban centers. Justinian's administration, once affluent enough to finance battles across 3 fronts, went bankrupt. The empire's defenses dissolved, opening a vacuum that barbarian groups quickly filled. The Slavs then invaded the Balkans, and Italy was overrun by the Lombards. Moreover, the East, the territories meticulously reclaimed, were lost once more, never to be recovered. Control of the Western Mediterranean would elude the Roman Empire forever after. In Ireland, Celtic historical accounts describe a shortage of grain during the year 536. Excavations reveal an abrupt and prolonged downturn in farming operations. Some academics consider this challenging period potentially influential, that later preserved ancient wisdom across the emerging Dark Ages. Chinese historical texts recount extensive hunger as rural populations consumed tree bark and engaging in cannibalism. This societal turmoil would require many decades to settle. Across the Americas, where sophisticated societies thrived, completely disconnected. Annual tree growth patterns indicate identical worldwide cooling. Certain academics theorize this climatic upheaval could have played a. The world was profoundly transformed in the decade spanning 536 to 546, diverging starkly from the one existing at its outset. That classical The population wouldn't regain its previous numbers for another 200 years. The infrastructure, including roads, aqueducts, and public buildings, gradually decayed. Learning disappeared as libraries were incinerated and academics passed without any pupils. The dawn of the Middle Ages, often termed the Dark Ages, its gloom stemmed from the actual extinguishing of light. The year 536 acted as the critical pivot, closing antiquity and ushering in an era that was yet arguably the most unsettling element of this calamity is its near-complete oblivion, erased from memory. In contrast to the Black Death which Boccaccio and numerous historians meticulously documented its impact, as the society disintegrated, numerous historical accounts disappeared and a multitude of observers perished, unable to set down their perspectives. For a long time, the year 536 simply served as an obscure detail. Ice core examination from Greenland, together with global dendrochronology, to ultimately show the worldwide magnitude of the climatic calamity. Additionally, diligent historians were needed, combining scattered evidence from many tongues to piece together the What then is the significance of 536? It makes us recall a truth we fervently wish to ignore. Human society is brittle, and the structures we rely on, our food chain, weather patterns, general well-being, could collapse. With confidence, can launch a 10-year period of linked misfortunes that completely remakes the planetary human sphere. The residents of 536 acted entirely properly, judging by their era's heritage, yet it was insufficient. The sun's glow faded, and a sequence of consequences unfurled. The ancient epoch concluded, not with a violent clash of barbarian forces, or a quiet unraveling devoid of warmth. Its end saw depleted granaries and abundant mass graves, plus the understanding that humanity, despite all its accomplishments, persists under the sway of powers beyond its full command. For long eras, the year 530 in recorded history. Our remembrance ensures that when our present-day systems falter, when global climate fluctuates, and should fresh pandemics manifest, we grasp the gravity of the situation. The year 536 represented a civilization's examination, failed. The planet reformed into a novel entity. The sunlight faded, yet it didn't extinguish entirely. Perhaps that's the genuine takeaway. Even amidst the most somber year in mankind's recorded past, we ensure the past is revitalized. I'll catch you